Hello everyone, welcome back. So in this lecture, you are going to learn Spring Boot Data JDBC. So before learning Spring Boot Data JDBC, so you must understand what is JDBC. So JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity. So if your application want to connect with the database, then we required JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. With the help of JDBC, our application can connect with any database like MySQL and Oracle, MongoDB or any database. So it's a Java database connectivity is the JavaSoft specification of a standard application programming interface. So that allows Java programs to access database management system. The JDBC API consists of set of interfaces and classes written in the Java programming language. So in very simple I will explain you. So if your application want to connect with the database, then you need a JDBC. So Java database connectivity. So how? So earlier before Spring Boot and Spring Framework application, so if you write JDBC code, so we need to write lot of code. So we have to create the connection object and we have to create the statement object and prepared statement object and callable object, and also we have to use we have to create the transaction, and then we have to create the we have to commit the transaction, and the connect database connection object again we have to close manually. So we have to write lot of code. So in Spring Boot or Spring Framework application, if you use Spring Data JDBC, we no need to write the code to connect uh, with the database. We no need to create the connection object, and we no need to create the prepared statement and statements to send SQL queries to database, and also we no need to close the connection, and we no need to commit the transaction. So in Spring Boot and Spring Framework, implementing JDBC is very simple. So I will explain you later. So now what we can do, so we'll create one simple Spring Boot application, and then we'll start connecting with any one of the database. So let me create one simple Spring Boot application. So from where we can create Spring Boot project with the help of Spring Initializer. So let me open Spring Initializer. So if you open the browser and go to Spring Initializer and click on very first link. From here we can create Spring Boot project. So let me create one Maven project, and I will go with Spring Boot version latest version 3.2.1. I will always recommend uh, better use always latest version of Spring Boot. Don't use snapshot versions. So snapshot versions are created by Spring Boot core team, so those are under still development. So it's always better to use latest version. So some people may not see 3.2.1. So in future might be this version will be updated with latest version. So you no need to bother about it. So whatever latest version which is available in Spring Initializer, so you select that latest version. Okay, and now let's go with let's create a project root package com dot spring. What I will do, so I will give package name as the com dot spring boot JDBC. Okay, and I will give project name as Spring Boot JDBC. So now I will go with JDK 17 and let me add the dependencies. So we are going to create the project to connect with database. So we are in this lecture we are going to connect with H2 in-memory database. So there are lot of data frameworks, lot of databases are available in the market. So Oracle and MySQL and MongoDB and Couchbase. So lot of databases are there. So here in Spring Boot application also, Spring Boot framework will provide H2 in-memory database. So we are going to connect with H2 in-memory database with the help of JDBC. Okay. So now let me add web module to create a REST APIs and web applications. So let me add Spring Web dependency and we are going to connect with the H2 in-memory database which is provided by Spring Boot framework. So let me add H2 in-memory database. So select it. So how we are going to connect with H2 in-memory database? To connect with any database, we need to use JDBC. So we are going to use JDBC to connect with the database. So we need to add dependency Spring Data JDBC. You can see here Spring Data JDBC. So add it. So let me add Spring Dev Tools also. Spring Boot Dev Tools. So this dependency is used for, so without restarting the server our changes should reflect automatically. So I have added Spring Web module and to create REST APIs and also H2 database. So we are going to connect with H2 in-memory database which is provided by Spring Boot framework, and we are going to connect with database with the help of JDBC, nothing but Java database connectivity, and Spring Boot Dev Tools. So let me download the project. So click on generate button. So go to downloads folder. So you can see zip file is downloaded successfully. Let me extract that zip file. Yeah, now let me copy the project root directory, copy the path, and now go to Eclipse and we can import that project. So select if you did not find existing Maven project, just type Maven. So how we can import the project? With the help of click on import link, and then here existing Maven projects, and you can browse that project from here as well. So I am going to copy that project to folder path and click on enter, and then click on finish button. That's it. So the moment we add the application, our all the dependencies will be downloaded in background. So after that, so now let me start the server. So Spring Boot project we have imported successfully. So from where we can start our Spring Boot application? So with the help of main Spring Boot application.java. So from here our Spring Boot framework execution will start. So let me run the application. Right click on the class and click on Java run as and Java application. So open the console and check whether server is started successfully or not. So server started successfully, and if you observe here, so before explaining uh, H2 in memory database, so we already discussed, right? So with the help of JDBC, our application can connect with the database. So in Spring Boot or Spring Framework application, so if you want to connect with database, or if you want to connect with any standard application, standalone application, also if you want to connect with the database, we need set of properties. Those properties is called driver class name. So if you want to connect with the database, so we need these following four properties: driver class name and URL and username and password. So in Spring Boot application, we can provide these properties in application.properties, and then we can connect with any database based on the URL which we have provided. So in this lecture, we are going to connect with H2 in memory database. So now let me add this property. So before adding these properties to our Spring Boot application, so if you observe here, so the moment you start the server, Spring Boot is provided URLs. You can see added connection. So added connection H2 console available at H2-console. So you can see URL is equal to JDBC colon mem colon. So this is the URL to connect with H2 in memory database. So whenever we are starting the server, so Spring Boot will provide uh, URL to connect with H2 in memory database. So by using this URL, we can connect with H2 in memory database. And what is the username? So by default, username will be SA. So there is no password. Okay. So now if you go to the properties, so URL is needed to connect with H2 in memory database, and username and password also required. So since it is a in-memory database, Spring Boot will provide URL and username during the server startup. So by using this URL and username, we can connect our application with H2 in-memory database. So from where we can connect, so you can see, so there is a H2 console available at /H2-console. So by using this URL, we can connect with H2 in memory database. So let me access this. So some people may have doubt, sir. So we haven't installed the software, so database software. So we are going to connect with HD in memory database, but we haven't installed the software. So we no need to install the software to connect with H2 in memory database. Spring Boot framework automatically will provide H2 in memory database. We no need to install the software. And also this HD in memory database will not use in production environment. This is only for testing purpose for developers. So in real time environment, this H2 in memory database will not be used. Okay. So now we are just to make use of Spring Boot feature. This is one of the Spring Boot feature which is provided H2 in memory database. Okay. So now our application, Spring Boot application, is provided URL and username to connect with H2 in memory database. So how we can connect? With the help of H2 console. So go to the browser and just type localhost colon 8080 slash, and then you just need to copy H2-console. This is the URL to connect to H2 console. So now paste it, click on enter. You can see, so H2 console is opened. So here you can see there is a URL is provided, JDBC URL, and username will be admin. So uh, earlier batch I already created some database, so that's the reason it is cached actually, that's the reason it is showing. So you don't need to bother about it. So now how we can connect with H2 in memory database with the help of JDBC URL and username and password. So what is the JDBC URL? So open the console. So this is the JDBC URL. Just copy this URL. This entire URL you have to copy, guys. Just copy this entire JDBC URL and go to browser and paste the JDBC URL. Okay, pasted. So now what is the username? So you can go to the console again. Default username will be SA. So SA is the default username for H2 in memory database. So now let me give SA. So no need to give the password. So let me test the connection. Click on test connection. So you can see test successful. Nothing but we can connect H2 in memory database. Click on connect. So if you see, we are able to connect with H2 in memory database. So if you are starting the server, restarting the server, so every time Spring Boot application will create new database URL. So let me stop the server and start the server again. We'll see now. So whenever you are restarting the server, Spring Boot framework always create new database URL to connect with H2 in memory database. Now before that, so why it is okay? So port 8080 already in use. So why? Because earlier server is already in started mode. So by mistake, without stopping the server properly, so I just restarted the server and then it is saying 8080 port is already in use. So many people don't know how to resolve this issue. So whenever some issue is coming like this, so you should feel very happy. Why? Because you are getting a chance to fix the issue. So how we can fix the issue? So many people don't know this. Blindly they will restart the computer and uh, they will start the server again. So instead of that, we can kill the process which is already running. How we can kill the process? To fix this issue, port 8080 was already in use. Click on Control Alt to delete and go to Task Manager, and after that you can go to the details, and on the right side you can see number of processor running. Click anywhere, you can click right side menu and just type j letter. Type j letter, you can see there is a java w.exe. Just select that and end the task. So what will happen? Our tomcat instance will be killed properly. So now let me clear the console and let me start the server again. A server started successfully. So now let me connect with HT in memory database. Refresh the URL again. Just click on browser, refresh, and see, you can see you lost the connection. Why? Because you have just restart we have just restarted the server, right? So whenever we restart the server, so that time what will happen? So Spring Boot will always create new database URL to connect with H2 in memory database. So previous URL it will not work. So testing purpose, what I will do, this is previous URL which we have provided. So let me click on test connection. See, we are not able to connect with H2 in memory database. So why? Because we just restarted the server. So Spring Boot is created new JDBC URL. So let me copy this new JDBC URL and go to browser and delete existing one and paste it and click on connect button. See, we are able to connect with H2 in memory database. So this H2 console we can disable also, guys. So by default it is enabled, so we can disable this H2 console also. So whenever you start the server, by default H2 console is enabled by default. So how we can disable that? So if you want to disable or enable, we can add a property in application.properties. So what we are going to enable or disable? So H2 console. So go to the browser. So this is the H2 console, right? So this H2 console, if you don't want to uh, open this H2 console, if you want to disable this, then we can, there is a option called there is a property in there is a property is provided in Spring Boot to disable H2 console. How we can disable? So let me add that property, spring dot h2 dot console dot enabled is equal to false. So if you add this property, and then you can see our server is restarted again, and clear the console, and now go to your browser and just click on refresh the URL. See, white label error. So now H2 console is not available, you can see. So no, not found. So H2 hyphen console is not found. Why? Because we have disabled explicitly. So again we can enable it. How we can enable? By providing true. Just save this application dot properties and go to the browser and refresh the browser, and again you can see H2 console is opened. So you can disable or enable H2 console. So now since server is restarted again, so you can see uh, Spring Boot is created new database URL again. So previous URL it will not work. So let me try to connect. See, we are unable to connect. So why? Because since I have added the property in application.properties, our server is restarted. So whenever server restarts, Spring Boot will create new JDBC URL. So you can see. So let me copy this again, and you have to go to H2 console and replace this URL, and then you can test connection and you can connect it. Okay, sir, if it is every time whenever we are restarting the server, URL is changing. So how we can fix that issue? So without changing the URL, whether we can able to connect with HT in memory database? Yes, we can connect with HT in memory database without changing the URL. So how we can specify? By adding these properties, JD data source dot URL and username and password. So let me add these three properties to uh, connect with H2 in memory database. So without changing JDBC URL every time, so we just need to add these three properties. So actually, so if you want to connect with any database, we must need these four properties, guys. So in Spring Boot Spring Framework application, you must provide the driver class name, but in Spring Boot application you no need to provide the driver class name. So why? Because so Spring Boot will take care of, it can identify the driver class by default. So now here data source dot URL, username and password, we can add it into application dot properties. So let me, and before explaining that, so if you provide URL, so if you want to connect with MySQL database, so there is a see, if you want to connect with MySQL database, there is a different database URL. So this is the URL to connect with MySQL database, but properties will be same. URL, username and password properties are same, and only URL will change and driver class name will change. So you can see this is the URL to connect with it with MySQL database, and this one is a database name. You can see, right, the value which I have selected, this is a database name which is available in MySQL, and rest other all are belongs to MySQL URL. Okay, and if you want to connect with H2 console, so we need a, this is the URL to connect with H2 console. So you can see in H2 console, if you open, so this till here JDBC colon H2 colon mem. So till here URL will be common, and right hand side after colon here you can see this is the database name. So I have mentioned clearly here. So this is the database URL, JDBC URL to connect with H2 in memory database. This is the driver class name for H2 in memory database. If you open the console, let me go back again. You can see there is a driver class, h2 dot driver class, arg dot h2 dot driver class is already provided. We no need to declare this in application dot properties. So if you want to connect with HTML memory database, these are all the properties we have to add, example properties. Okay, so if you want to connect with MySQL, so this is the URL to connect with the MySQL database. If you want to connect with Oracle database, so this is the URL to connect with Oracle database. Depends on your requirement, you can specify driver class name and JDBC URL and username and password, and these properties are common for each and every database. So only URL and driver class name will change, okay, based on your database which we are which you want to connect. Okay, so now what is the problem we are facing here? So whenever we are restarting the server, every time Spring Boot is providing new database URL, so it will be difficult for us to copy paste every time whenever you restart the server. Instead of that, we can add those properties here. So these three properties, guys: data source dot URL, data source dot username, and data source dot password. So let me add these properties. Spring dot data source dot URL is equal. So what is the JDBC URL which I have given here? So I have cleared the console. So let me start. I think we already have here, right? So this is the URL. So instead of that, what I will do, let me stop the server and let me start the server, and then I will copy latest URL. So new JDBC URL is added. So just copy this URL and provide it here in application dot properties. That's it. So now spring dot data source dot username. So username by default will be SA, right? And there is no password. Spring dot data source dot password. So we can give our custom username and password also. By default, if you don't specify any username and password, so Spring Boot default username will be SA, and without password we can connect with H2 in memory database. If you want to customize your username and password, you can give your own username. So I will give test is the username, and password also I will give test. So whatever username you want, you can just keep it here. So this is the JDBC, so this is the JDBC URL to connect with uh, HT in memory database, and this one will be your database name. So your database name also you can customize it. How we can customize? Remove this one and add test DB or something like that, or employee DB. Okay, employee DB. That's it, and save your application. And if you do any spell mistakes, so your application will not connect with HTML memory database. You make sure you should type the property properly. Spring dot data source dot URL, spring dot data source dot username, and spring dot data source dot password. So I have given employee DB. So by using this JDBC URL, we can connect with HT in memory database. So let me copy this URL and go to the browser and paste that URL here. Oh, I haven't copied properly. Let me copy again. Control C, and then go to H2 console and clear it and paste it here. And what is the username? By if you try to connect here, you will see what will happen. See test connection. it's not able to connect, right? It is clearly saying unable to connect, not found. So now what we can do, so we have to provide our JDBC URL. So this is the JDBC URL which we have given in application.properties, and username will be, I have given test, and password also I have given test. So let me click on connect. See, we are able to connect with employee database. I have given database name as a employee DB, and username will be test. If you want, you can change it as a admin also. So let me give admin any username and any password you can provide it here. So let me try to give different credentials also to make you understand. So let me save the file and go to H2 console. Again refresh the H2 console, and again connection is refreshed again. So let me, what is the username I have given? Admin. What is the password I have given? Admin. Test connection, and connection is successful, and click on connect button. So now, so admin password you have to give admin. Once it is connected successfully, so every time you no need to copy the database URL. Why? Because we have added our own JDBC, our own database JDBC URL to connect with H2 in memory database. So now till here common guys, till here is common for to connect with H2 in memory database, and this should be your database name. I have declared in I have specified in document clearly, right? So this is the URL to connect with H2 in memory database. Here I have given test DB, but we have given it as a employee DB. So whatever database name you can give your own database name. Any database name you can give, employee DB or user DB, anything. So I have given employee DB. So now if you stop the server, if you start the server, do we need to give URL again? No. So you can see, let me start the server again. So if you observe here, whatever URL which I have provided here, so our application is connected with same JDBC URL. If you check it here, JDBC colon h2 colon mem colon employee DB. So this is the URL we have specified in application dot properties. So JDBC URL we have provided in application dot properties. So our application will always connect with this URL, and our application always connect with the username, and our application always connect with HTTP memory database by using the username and password which are provided in application dot properties. Very simple guys, very simple. So in this lecture we just understand how to connect with H2 in memory database, and next lecture we are going to create tables in H2 in memory database. Very easy guys. If you let me summarize the class. If you want to connect your application, want to connect with database, so we need these three properties. So spring.datasource.url, and spring.datasource.username, and spring.datasource.password. So based on your requirement you can connect with any database, MySQL, Oracle, MongoDB, Couchbase, and HDD memory database. So any database you can connect. So based on your requirement you have to provide respective URL. So if you open the document, so this is the URL to connect with H2 in memory database, and if you want to connect with MySQL, and this is the URL to connect with MySQL database. If you want to connect with Oracle, so this is the URL to connect with Oracle database. So based on the requirement you can specify respective URL in your Spring Boot application. So inside the application dot properties we can provide URL, username and password. So since we are connecting with H2 in memory database, so this URL is provided by Spring Boot, during the server startup. So that URL you can copy it here. So if you don't specify the URL in application.properties to connect with HTML database, so whenever you are restarting the server, every time new database URL will be created. So you have to copy that URL every time to connect with H2 console. So instead of that, what you can do, very first time whenever you are starting the server, and let me show you again. So let me stop the server. I think server is stopped, right? So let me start the server again. And if you don't specify these three properties, let me tell you, let me stop the server, and again let me show you clearly. If you don't specify these properties, let me remove this and save the file and start the server. So I just stopped it. I did not stop it properly. So now let me start the server again. If you see, if you don't specify those properties, so HT in-memory database, so if you want to connect with HT in-memory database, Spring Boot always provide. So again same problem came. So web server port 8080 is already in use. Make sure guys, we should stop the server before restarting the server. Why? Because if you start the server again, if you try to restart, so our application will not start properly. It is clearly saying port 8080 was already in use. It's unable to restart the server again. So how we can fix? Control Alt Delete and Task Manager and go to details and select Java, and then end the process. Now we can start the server again. So whenever you are starting the server, so every time Spring Boot will create new database URL. See now it is new database URL is created. So if you want to give your own URL, so what we have to do, we have to provide these three properties. That's it, these three properties we have to provide. And you just need to uh, if you don't know the format of URL for H2 console, so you just need to start the server and copy this URL and paste it into URL property value, delete and paste. So after that, so you have to paste properly. So now after that, you can, this is the database URL by default which is given by Spring Boot. So you can customize your database name as well. Delete this name and you can give employee DB, and you can give your own username and password. So let me save it. So now you can see our application is connected with the employee DB. Open the console. Our application is connected with employee DB. So in next lecture we will create tables and we will perform inserting the data in database. Very simple guys. Okay, so who are all watching newly, you just need to subscribe my channel and you can watch all the videos. You can learn here Spring Boot and Angular and microservices and rest other all the concept. So Java Cafeteria is my channel and you can subscribe and you can watch all the classes guys. Okay, thank you guys. I will catch you in next lecture.